Hello and welcome to this first installment of your IronCAD evaluation training. In this first video, we're going to basically show you how to launch IronCAD and navigate its user interface. So let's get started. We already have IronCAD open, so the first thing you notice was we have a bunch what I call a quick start toolbar up here. So the first time what you want to do is you want to hit the main icon here and you're going to go File, New. And we get this dialog. IronCAD consists of three environments. One 3D environment, which is called the scene. The scene is where you do all your 3D designing, your parts, your assemblies, your sub-assemblies, everything, your sheet metal parts, everything is done in the scene. The drawing is IronCAD's .icd file extension. It's its two-dimensional detailing. It's not a full drafting package, although some customers can and do rely on the drawing to do all their drafting needs. But for more potent or higher end drafting capabilities, much similar to, let's say, AutoCAD, you want to use the Casa Draft environment. Okay, so you basically have, again, one 3D design environment and two drafting environments. The drawing environment, like I said, is more or less for quick detailing, and the Casa Draft is more production ready type of drafting. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to start with our scene and say OK. The next dialog that pops up is IronCAD out of the box gives you a bunch of predefined or preset scene files, and they're pretty self-explanatory. Here's one that's a blank scene. Here's one that's got a black background with a reflection, blue with a datum plane in it. So you see you have several predefined ones. We've created one called a Magna video just because it plays better over the web. So we're going to pick that one in a minute. But just wanted to show you that you have all these are in English units. Here's your metric units. And studios, basically you can create these as well, where you create preset scenes with maybe as a room. Here's one with a room where you can just plunk in your designs without having to redesign a room all the time. So and as I said, you can populate these with your own, which we'll show you later in the series. But so like I said, we did our own. We'll call it Magna Video. And being that if this is one, let's say you're going to always want to use, you would say select as the default. Then we don't have to run through this process of picking it all the time. We can go right to this button up here. So we select that, say OK. And you can see we just made a nice flat gray background. And just to show you what we have here, we added the shadow and a slight reflection to our default template. Okay. First thing off the bat, you see the user interface. IronCAD is basically a Windows based program. So if you know the new Windows format, you pretty much know how to navigate the tabs here. Okay. Just a slight subtle differences here. This is more or less Windows based, where we have our feature tab where they give you more of the creating of the features, blending patterns, so on and so forth. Your sketching palette, where you would do all your, obviously your sketching, surfacing, assembly. Here is where you could just bring other scene files in, or export or import files into your current design. Here's a quick sheet metal. Just our sheet metal package is catalog based, so these are just more some of the advanced features to apply to them, and we'll get to that later on. Tools, here's where you have your mechanism mode. This is allows you to interact with your assemblies by assigning constraints to detect for collisions and so on. Visualization tab is where you do your rendering and your animation. Okay, we'll get into that. Annotation, this allows you to apply 3D dimensions that'll act as either measurement tools or constraints or positioning tools. We also have a standalone measurement tool, text, where you can put 3D text into your scene. Here's a center of gravity palette that you can use on your assemblies or parts. Common is pretty much more or less the common things you use in your design. And then lastly up here is your add-ins, where we'll have maybe third-party add-ins. Right here we have Go Simulate, as this is a free FEA package included with your IronCAD. And so we have Cadenas, which is a 3D parts warehouse, which is also included. So it's more or less where you'd find more of your 3D add-ons, more or less. Alright, so that's pretty straightforward how you navigate through here, right? Along the left here, I'll just browse. If you want to stretch this out, typical Windows, just grab the window and pull it out, and you see we have 3 tabs down here. The Scene tab basically is your history structure browser, so to speak. It will, anything you do in your scene, any part, any assembly, any lights, any sheet metal parts, anything that you put into your scene will show up in the scene browser. So for instance, if we drag a part and you see right away it shows up in the browser, you can click it, you can see its feature structure, so on and so forth. So this manages all your parts in the scene. Alright. The search tool is very good if you're dealing with large assemblies. You can type in the name and or parts of the name, and it'll list down here everything it finds in the scene that has that query. You can filter that out a little bit if you're just looking for assemblies or parts or IntelliShapes. And here you can add, let's say for instance you want to find the name that contains, you know, part, whatever, and you can keep going on and on. This is not obviously not a good scene to show this in, but just to show you that does exist. And then you have a properties tab browser. What the properties browser does is it's constantly evolving depending on what you're doing. Right now, with nothing selected in the scene, it's giving you some basic actions you would normally use if there's nothing selected. If you select a part, now you're getting more part-orientated tools, splitting parts, sectioning parts, combining parts, hiding parts, you name it. It also lists some of the common BOM information here. This is not the extensive BOM, but just more or less the common ones you want to see. You can scroll down, you can change the surface smoothness of the part here, its density, you name it. And you can click the tabs here to expand as much as you want in Smart Paint. More properties takes you right into the property sheet of that part, where you can add more custom BOM information. Everything has a property sheet in IronCAD, so we'll get to that. From parts to features to lights. These are basically your 3 tabs here. You're going to use the scene browser most likely more often. More seasoned users don't even use the other 2, unless, you know, the search does come involved, again with large assemblies, but more or less you want your scene browser here. More importantly, you have a catalog browser. If we extend this here, you see we have various catalogs of parts. Like I just showed you, we dragged a shape in, a block. So for every positive block, there's a negative block, what I call. So the negative blocks have an H in front of it, as you see here. Those stands for hole. So if we got a block which I dragged in and a H block, and we drag it on there, it removes material. Okay, and you know, it shows up as the whole block feature here. Okay. Same here. You have a cylinder. We can drag it in. You see it shows up in our scene browser. We pull the handle, change the diameter. The same for the opposite. Okay. So this is the shapes catalog. You see we have advanced shapes. Here's our sheet metal catalog with all the sheet metal specific modeling. IronCAD does all the sheet metal through drag and drop. There's no sketching in the sheet metal mode, other than if you're creating custom profiles and that nature where you can change the shape of it. If we click this arrow down here, whoops, I'm sorry, we click this arrow down here, it'll give you a list of all the active catalogs, being that we can't see this. So we go to the tools catalog, it gives you all the, these are a lot of libraries we have of like fasteners. Drag a fastener in. Give it a second. I don't know why it's taking so long, but it's, there we go. You see you got bolts. It automatically detects the hole size and resizes the fasteners, screws, nuts, washers, pins, rings. We say OK, and you see we pick the ring and it shows up here in our scene browser. Okay, Sprint, Helix, you name it. So that's our catalog, and we'll get more into that later on. Just wanted to show you that. And then the bottom down here, it just gives you your view size, what units you're currently working in. You got some view fit the scene. You want to do a window. Okay. If you want to look at a specific face, you click right on the face. By the way, if it's out of view, if you just go into the clear background and double click your middle mouse button, it fits the scene for you. Okay. So remember that if you want to just fit everything in your scene into view, just go in the background somewhere and double click the middle mouse button. Okay. Then you got your perspective you can turn on and off here. This is your shaded views. What kind it's coming off the thing here, but you want to see wireframe, clear shaded. You know, we usually stick with just straight shaded in 3D. This is kind of hard to see. I can't get this to go up for some reason, but this is your part modes: innovative part mode and structured part mode. And we'll show that later on. And lastly, you have your configuration control here. So this here is your selection filter. It'll allow you to, rather than having to click constantly, you can say I only want to click parts, I only want to click IntelliShapes, which is our term for features. I only want to pick faces, so on and so forth. And this last one here, faces by auto feature, that's our feature recognition tool. It's on demand. It doesn't go through a whole process of trying to figure it out. You just click, make a feature, done. Very nice and handy. It does have some also other nice capabilities beyond just feature recognition, but we can get on that later on. And over here is our configurations. Right now we only have one default, but if you click the button next to it, you can create a multitude of configurations, and we'll get this into later on too. Just showing that exists. For instance, default will be this view. Maybe you want to create one called exploded, and then you can toggle between those particular configurations. Alright, so we'll close that. That's pretty much it to the interface. You know, if you want to minimize anything here, if you want to minimize this top bar, you right click anywhere in the gray area and just say minimize it, and it kind of tucks it away for you. Just right click in the blank area and unselect it to bring it back. With these browser windows, the catalog browser and these windows, if you don't want to see them, you just auto hide the push pin and it tucks it away here for you. And then as you hover over one, it'll pop up that particular browser for you. If you're like me, I like a lot of modeling window space. I'll do the same here. I'll tuck this away and I'll minimize this window so I have like a really nice big window to play with. And then you just really go the way you need to go at a particular time. If you need to go to the feature tab, then it just comes in and generates it for you. Okay, see, everything pops up. When you're done with it, everything gets tucked away. Alright, so that's kind of the first installment of the interface, trying to show you where things are, how to manipulate them. Again, one other thing I do want to show is if you hit the push button and lock it, once it's locked, you can rip these browsers apart and reposition them any way you want. Okay, we're grabbing the tabs down here and we're pulling them apart. Maybe if you have a dual screen setup, you can put some on another screen. If you want them back together again, just hover them over the top here and grab to the headers, and then you put them all together again. And then if you go near the side, it'll snap back into place again, and so on and so forth. What I also like to do with my scene browser, I'm sorry, my catalog browser, being that I don't like to use this button to see what I have open all the time. A matter of preference for me is I drag this down to the bottom of my screen, and I'll just resize it a little bit like this. That way I see all my catalogs available to me, and I got plenty more I can put in here and see it all the time without having to constantly click this button to get to it. All right, just a little trick I use, and then I'll minimize that so it tucks down here. Okay, again, that's the end of this first user interface installment. I would move on to the second one. We'll show you some of the hotkeys and the customization. All right, thank you.